At the edge of a forgotten village stood a silent hill that had guarded its secret for generations. The elders used to say that beneath its stubborn rocks lay a treasure, gold coins, ancient jewels, maybe even relics from a lost kingdom. But the hill was merciless. Its stones were so hard that even the strongest men, armed with iron tools and years of determination, failed to break a single solid layer. Hammers shattered, hope faded, and over time, belief turned into legend. The village slowly changed. Young men left for the city in search of opportunity. Fields dried, shops closed. Stories about the treasure became bedtime tales rather than shared dreams. The hill remained untouched, silent, unbreakable, and almost mocking those who once dared challenge it. Among the remaining villagers lived a small girl named Amina. She was not strong. She did not carry heavy tools. She did not shout bold promises about finding treasure. But she carried something far more powerful: curiosity. Amina loved broken things. While other children played in the dusty streets, she collected scraps of metal, broken bicycle chains, discarded motors, and rusted screws. Her father, once a farmer who struggled to make ends meet, often wondered what she planned to do with all that useless junk. But Amina saw possibility where others saw waste. Every evening, she would sit under a neem tree with a notebook, sketching strange designs. Gears connected to levers, rotating cylinders, crushing plates. She watched videos at the small village internet cafe whenever electricity allowed it. She asked questions that even schoolteachers struggled to answer. Why does stone resist force? What if vibration is stronger than impact? Can frequency weaken structure? People laughed gently at her questions. Treasure hunters have failed for 100 years, they would say. And you think you can break the hill? Amina would simply smile. One day, after months of quiet experimentation, something unusual happened. A loud humming sound echoed from the backyard of her modest home. Villagers gathered near the mud walls, whispering in confusion. From behind the gate, dust rose into the air. Amina stepped out, her face covered in gray powder but her eyes shining. "It works," she said softly. Behind her stood a machine no one expected from a child. Built from recycled parts, bicycle pedals, a modified engine from a broken water pump, and carefully aligned metal plates, the device looked strange but purposeful. It wasn't designed to smash rocks with brute force. It was built to shake them, precisely and repeatedly. Instead of hammering the stone, the machine created controlled vibrations at a frequency that weakened the internal bonds of rock. What had resisted decades of force now began to crumble into fine soil. The first test was simple. Amina placed a heavy stone block beneath the vibrating head of her invention. The machine roared. The villagers watched in stunned silence. Within minutes, cracks formed. Then slowly, unbelievably, the stone began to disintegrate, not into large chunks, but into soft, dusty earth. No explosion, no dramatic break, just science. The village that had given up hope felt something unfamiliar: possibility. The next morning, the entire community gathered at the base of the legendary hill. Some came out of curiosity. Others came out of disbelief. Amina stood beside her machine, which had been mounted on a wooden cart. Her father placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. No one laughed this time. When the machine started, the sound echoed against the hill. The vibrating plates pressed against the rock surface. Dust began to fall like gray rain. Small cracks spread across what had once seemed indestructible. Hour after hour, the machine worked. By sunset, something incredible had happened. A section of the hill had turned into manageable soil. The impossible had become real. The villagers cheered, not because treasure had been found yet, but because the wall of limitation had been broken. Days turned into weeks. The machine continued its steady rhythm. More sections of rock transformed into earth. People who had left years ago heard about the miracle and returned to witness it themselves. Some brought investment, others brought engineers. The once forgotten village began to attract attention. Local journalists arrived with cameras. They interviewed Amina, asking how she had done it. She didn't speak about treasure. She spoke about understanding problems differently. "You don't always need more force," she said calmly. "Sometimes you need a better method." As excavation continued, they did find something beneath the hill, but not chests of gold. Instead, they discovered rich mineral soil perfect for farming and rare construction materials that could be sold at good prices. The land beneath the rocks was fertile beyond imagination. The real treasure wasn't buried gold. It was opportunity. With the newly accessible soil, agriculture flourished. The village began producing crops in abundance. Small businesses opened to process and export materials uncovered from the hill. Roads were built, electricity became stable, schools improved. Amina's machine evolved too. Engineers helped refine her invention into a sustainable rock processing technology. It required less fuel and produced minimal environmental damage compared to traditional blasting methods. Soon, nearby regions requested demonstrations. The girl who once collected scrap metal was invited to science fairs in major cities. She stood on stages where powerful leaders applauded her innovation. But every time she was asked what inspired her, she told the same story. A hill that everyone thought was impossible. Years later, when people spoke about the transformation of the village, they didn't just talk about economic growth. They talked about mindset. The young no longer rushed to leave at the first sign of hardship. Instead, they began asking, what can we create here? Workshops were established to teach children engineering basics using recycled materials. Amina insisted that creativity should never depend on expensive equipment. Ideas, she would say, are the most powerful tools. The hill, once feared and avoided, became a symbol of resilience. A small plaque was placed at its base. Strength breaks tools. Understanding breaks barriers. The treasure legend had not been entirely wrong. There was something valuable hidden beneath the stone. But it wasn't what people expected. It wasn't wealth waiting to be claimed by the strongest hands. It was a challenge waiting to be solved by the sharpest mind. The story of a small village girl who turned rock into soil spread far beyond its borders. Universities studied her vibration-based design. Environmental experts praised its sustainability. Investors offered partnerships. But Amina never forgot the evenings under the neem tree, sketching ideas in a notebook while others doubted her. In a world where many believe that progress only comes from big cities and powerful corporations, her story proved something different. Innovation can rise from the quietest corners. The village that once watched its youth disappear now watched visitors arrive. The economy stabilized, families reunited, and children grew up believing that no obstacle was permanent. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the now gentler slopes of the hill, Amina stood quietly beside her father. "Did you ever believe I could do it?" she asked with a smile. Her father looked at the transformed landscape, the farms, the roads, the bustling market. "I didn't understand your dream," he admitted. "But I never doubted your determination." The machine continued its steady hum in the distance, no longer a symbol of destruction, but of creation. The rocks that once guarded secrets now nourished life. And somewhere deep beneath what remained of the hill, perhaps there were still ancient coins untouched. But by then, no one cared. Because the greatest treasure had already been discovered. It was the power of thinking differently. It was the courage of a child who refused to accept that something was impossible simply because others had failed. It was the reminder that sometimes, the hardest stones crumble not to force, but to frequency. And in that once forgotten village, hope no longer sounded like a legend. It sounded like a machine humming steadily toward the future.